Good evening. I'm John Kotarski with Michael Kelly, and you're watching Hometown Movies, a new public access show for and about movie makers.
This is a series of programs that we've recently begun to focus in on filmmaking here in the Flint area. There are a lot of people doing this kind of work, most of us without any public attention. So we're taking the public access channel to get some of these films out where the community can enjoy them, and we can talk a little bit about filmmaking and with the filmmakers and the challenges that they face and the difficulties and the thrill of victory and agony of defeat. A little later in the program, we're going to have a telephone number and an address to contact us if you would like to present some film work or video work on the air. And we do encourage any of the filmmakers or video makers who are watching tonight to contact us, because if you don't, the series will have a short run. Our guest tonight is an old friend of both of us. His name is Mark Friesen, and John, I'll let you introduce him.
Well, good evening, Mark. Welcome to Hometown Movies. Mark is an independent filmmaker, as well as a graduate student at the University of Michigan and a teacher at U of M Film School, as I understand. Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah.
And a juggler and a farmer and a husband and a father. You wear several hats.
One at a time.
Yes. Well, we want to talk about the filmmaker's role. How did you get involved? I really don't know. How did you get involved in making films?
Well, reluctantly. I had always been interested in live performance, and several times I'd rationalized that I didn't even want to be involved in video and film, that the people involved in that seemed too narrow-focused for me, and I was more interested in the live angle. So I'd been a clown and done a lot of stage work. And then I came to realize that the only people in live entertainment, particularly stage work, not so much variety performance, were people who were kind of out of touch with reality, and that people that didn't really care about making a living, because it's very difficult to make a living at stage work. So I thought it might not hurt me to have some ability to deal with television people, because any time that I ever had, I just didn't understand what was going on. So I decided to get into this film and television program at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And it's a very generalized program, so it allows you to touch hands-on kind of stuff into pretty much every aspect of television and film. And if you burn your fingers, then you can pull out fast and move on to something else. I've tried as much as I can to do a little bit of everything. And probably more film than television, whereas other people do more television than film.
I like the fact that you include television, videotape, and film, kind of, in the same way. A lot of people are very elite in terms of the image, their importance of the image being on film as opposed to magnetic tape. How do you sort of balance the two? What do you feel is?
The principal difference between television and film is that film can pick up subtleties of light, and at this point in time has a better resolution, but video is moving ahead at great strides, so in another 10 years probably the resolution will be equal. I don't see any particular increase in the technology as far as the video to pick up subtle light differences, so it looks like film is here to stay. A lot of people in video say, no, film is a dinosaur, it'll be completely extinct in 25 years. So here we have two proponents of either side.
I have a question about you on the idea. It's interesting you raised the idea about as a performer, and you and I have both done a lot of stage work as well as some video and film. The idea of reality and living in another world. Although the theater participants or performers may be living in another world, do you feel that sometimes we've reached a point in our society where video creates an artificial reality, where if your image is on the television screen, then you are real, but the person next door taking the garbage can out somehow is not real or is less real than this video image?
I've had experiences where that came to me like a sudden flash of God touching me on the head, where I'd be in a dark room and everybody's eyes would be trained on that bright tube, And I'd realized that the TV was so much more real because I couldn't even see the other people in the room. So certainly I think that it's affecting our sense of reality.
Do you see any negative social
Well, sure,
results from that
people
kind of
don't
thing?
interact the way they used to. I don't think it's as far-reaching as a lot of people would like to say. I think that in the end, people talk through their television shows. They turn on their favorite TV shows, and then if they haven't seen a person in a long time, then they yap away and they say, "What was that show about?" So I think that's interpersonal
Well,
relationships.
people are saying that the video screen itself is going to be a much greater part of our lives when it marries itself with the computer and becomes interactive, and when you can when you can digitize an image and you can have random access to that, that it will change. It will change television. It won't be just entertainment.
I don't think it'll ever completely replace the burn barrel, though. There's nothing like standing around a burn barrel with a couple of your buddies and swigging a few cold ones down on a cold night and watching the bright glow in a dark space.
So do you watch a lot of television?
Well, more now than I used to. I rationalize it. I'm teaching dramatic writing for television and film, and it's very easy to flop down on the couch and say, I need to study this Nate Court to see what makes it work so that I can...
May have more to do with the fact that you're working regular hours and have a child. That tends to constrict one's creative activities sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Before I was married, and I was also in college at that time and didn't have a television, it seemed wonderful to not have a television because it was never there to tempt me. And someone gave me a television and I said, do I have to keep it?
Yeah.
And then I found that it was a nice voice to turn on when I came home and there was nobody in the house, just to turn that voice on and have somebody to not talk back to me, but to be there.
Yeah. I can remember the same...
Here, let me get this in.
The same experience of all the way through high school and college, not having a TV. I mean, it was there down the hall in the basement if you wanted to go find it. But I find now people make references, cultural references, and I'm left out. I've never seen My Mother the Car, but things like that you just don't fully understand.
Oh, there's so much on TV. Some of my students asked me about if they could write for Married with Children, and I had never seen it. I thought it was a soap opera.
That's the one show I watched. There you go.
And they've written some terrific Married with Children scripts. I'm amazed at what they can come up with.
Well, about your teaching, now, would you recommend that if someone wanted to make movies, that they should go to school, enroll in U of M Film School, and learn the process first, and then do a student movie, and then get out and make a movie, or
U of M's not what you call a film school. They have a film program. My program is called Telecommunications, and it has 2 semesters worth of classes in film. So that's, in order to be a film school, you pretty much have to study nothing but film for a year and a half or something to call it a film school. And you really need to be dedicated and know that's all you want to do with your life in order to get into one of the film schools, which are expensive and a lot of work, and then you shut out the rest of the world. U of M telecom program is nice because it's it's a graduate program, and it's designed for people who've decided they don't want to be French majors or math majors. They want to check into something else, but they're not exactly sure what they want to do. And so they wanted something where they can find out about a lot of things, which is what this program does. It makes you a generalist, makes you overqualified for almost anything, except for possibly teaching. But then you could make your way into New York and California and tell them that you didn't have a master's degree, you had a bachelor's degree, and you would be employable. You'd still have to stand in a long line because those are horrible businesses to break into.
Well, in about a minute,
We
we're
should
going
talk
to...
about your film. Yeah.
Yes. It warms you twice.
This is a documentary, right?
Right.
You classify it that?
Yeah, I made this film for the second semester of my film class. It's very free-form kind of class where a number of students would get together and organize, and whoever took on which role was what they were stuck with. So I directed this, and so and kind of put the scenario together, and people have been pretty happy with it. I entered it in a contest and got semi-finalist in the Midwestern competition for student films, for documentaries, and it got into the Ann Arbor International 16mm Film Festival. So it has some acceptance in the minor community here.
Were you assigned to do a documentary, or did you choose?
No, completely. That's why I say it's completely free form. The teacher says the assignment is to do one 10-minute sound sync 16 millimeter film. And it's up to you to get a team together and to raise the money, which is a substantial amount of a student's problem.
Yeah.
It didn't need to have a whole lot of sync sound, but it needed to have at least enough to make it be called a sync movie as opposed to a wild track movie, which you can just put music behind it or sound effects throughout. So that was the assignment.
Well, we'd like to take a look at it. Would you like to
Now,
introduce your movie to our
Sure,
audience?
the movie's called It Warms You Twice. It's basically about the process of making firewood and burning it from standing tree to rising smoke. A couple of my friends happen to use firewood exclusively for heating, and so I focused in on the two of them and came up with It Warms You Twice.
Some people say wood heat is warmer. Heat is heat, but wood heat seems warmer. Our optimum temperature is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. We raise frogs so that the warmer temperatures are a useful means of heat for us because we have aerators, and the air that is pumped into the tanks pick up the warm air during the day and raise the temperature of the water in the tanks, which theoretically accelerates the development of the tadpoles. We're here 7 days a week, and if you're using a quick-growing wood such as poplar or box elder, we have to load the stove every 2 to 3 hours. But if it's a dense grain wood such as ash, we can fill it up at night and cut down the dampers and decrease the amount of air that is going in.
Heating with wood is the most economical thing I can come up with. I'm in a real good location for it with acres of woods behind my place, and my neighbor next door is real generous about letting me go through his property and cleaning out the dead wood. I look mainly for oak wood. It seems to be easier to handle than most others. It splits up nice and straight, and there aren't a whole lot of knots. Any hardwood is good wood, really. A golf course, so I don't work too many hours in the winter. It's the slow time of the year. So I'm able to get out in the woods and put some time into splitting the wood and keeping the wood box stoked up. A big plus for us is that we are willing to do the work and have kind of a primitive lifestyle anyway.
Now, the biggest precaution that you have when you're cutting a tree down is to make sure that the tree falls where it's supposed to fall, in the direction. There are other precautions that you got to check out, and that's like overhead wires or the proximity of people's fences. They get downright resentful when you drop a tree on their fence. I guess I might be considered a farm boy, and I've always prided myself in the ability to go out and do a job and stick with it. Physical labor, you know, isn't all bad. It's sort of an ego trip. The sheep are just pets. Our main concern is the frogs. If you're cutting down a live tree, I would think that you should let it sit under reasonably dry conditions for a period of 3 or 4 months. Now that means that we are talking about a split piece of wood. One thing we should look at is when you split a piece of wood and you stack it in a pile, we always put the bark upwards so that when it rains the water will pass off and continue down the pile of wood. So after 3 months, you can use the wood.
I used to stack the wood very carefully, but I found it was too time-consuming and it didn't have too many advantages. The last couple of years or so, I've just been throwing pallets down on the ground and covering them with the wood and throwing a tarp over that. The tarp keeps the snow off the wood and makes it easier to handle.
All right, you go. What you can do? Change that blade.
Well, I'm going to take this load over to my house first. I'll mess with this later.
All right, but look, I'm gonna get this damn thing sharpened. And get your ass back here. Don't be staying over there too long. I'm not gonna do all this work myself.
I use files to sharpen the chain. I don't use automatic devices. It's just you judge the angle of the sharpening procedure by eye and give it about 10 licks with the file, and theoretically the tooth on the saw is sharp. I wouldn't use wood if I didn't have a splitter, and I can't understand how they did it in the old times. We would spend all our time splitting wood.
I like using a maul as opposed to a power splitter. It's almost like a sport for me. It's a challenging thing to get the wood to split that way, and it's good exercise. There's no joke about how heating with wood warms you twice. Once when you split it and once when you burn it. Actually, I guess wood can heat you 4 or 5 times when you cut it, and the first time and every time you move it around. I don't think wood heat is necessarily warmer, but it's pretty concentrated around the wood stove, and that's nice when you can come in from the cold and have 110 degrees right there to warm you up.
to do it again. Find us another good tree. Roll!
The techniques used in this film are dangerous and should not be attempted. For information on safe handling of chainsaws, consult your local chainsaw dealer.
Well, that's a great film for this time of year because it's just with the cold starting to settle in. That kind of gives us all a warm feeling. The shot, my favorite shot, I think, in the whole movie was taken from up above where you're looking down from the top of the tree. Did you climb up the tree or did your cinematographer climb up there?
That was one of what we call a production assistant. We put him up there. Who happens, by the way, to now have a job as a production assistant on Night Court. He went out to Hollywood and worked his way into a studio. Actually snuck on the lot and then snuck into an office and got a job.
How many of the shots did you plan in advance, and how much did you sort of look at the footage you have and put it together afterwards?
We planned almost everything in advance. I hate to admit it, but documentaries in general tend to be fake. I rationalize it like they rationalize the animals at SeaWorld. They say, we don't make these animals do anything they don't do in the wild, we just teach them to do it on cue. It was the same thing with my subjects. None of this would have happened except for me. And I said, come out and do it. And I made them do the sort of things that they do anyway, except they did it when I told them to. And it nearly drove them crazy, because it's just as bad as being an actor, except that these people aren't actors, they're real life people. So a lot of the stuff that they were doing when they were cutting down the tree, we just let them go and we shot them. But we knew what they were going to be doing, and so we could just set up the camera and then just wait for them to get to different places. But if it was away from the tree, then it was pretty much completely staged. And like the shot at my Jim's house, where his kids were putting the wood down the window, that's what they do. And so I said, well, would you do that today for us after we set up the camera? And they said, sure, no problem.
Well, there's a rich tradition in the documentary genre, isn't there? Nanook of the North.
Right.
He staged, he had the Eskimos
Absolutely.
stage that sort of activity.
And unless you have buco bucks to spend on wasted footage, that's the way it has to be done, because otherwise you have to wait around all day for something to happen.
Let's talk about money. What does it cost per minute of film? Your film was 11 minutes. What's an overall budget?
That cost us, not paying anybody for anything except for processing costs of the film, it cost us $3,500. So that includes original stock, it includes the sound stuff. Actually, we got most of our original recording tape, our magnetic tape, for free. And we just reused old stuff. But we had to use new stuff for the magnetic stock that you sync up to the picture. And then eventually we had to have that all processed, and then we had to make a print of it. So it added up to be about $3,500, which comes out to be, I don't know, $300 a minute.
Is that an average in film school? What's the going rate per minute of?
Well, that all depends on what your shooting ratio is. Our shooting ratio, I estimate, was about 4 to 1, which means for every foot you saw, we shot 4 feet and threw 3 of it away.
It's a pretty efficient ratio.
Yeah, it is, for a documentary particularly.
Michael Moore shot 30 to 1.
Right.
And his was not your slick Hollywood production, so.
But he couldn't set stuff up. If he's going in there and reacting to security guards that are not planned, and they're not doing what they're told to do. They're doing what they feel like doing. And so in a situation like that, you have to go through a lot more footage. If you're going to shoot a parade, then you have to rely on what you get, and so you have to shoot a lot more.
Have you worked in videotape as well?
Yeah, we did. I've been learning how to do studio and also field shoots, but not as much. It doesn't appeal to me quite as much.
That was going to be my next question. Why do you like film better?
Well, in general, it tends to look better. Video, you can play with the sound. I mean, you can do just about everything with video. That you can with film, but it's not generally done. So I'm learning film techniques with film. You can use those same techniques with video, and then mix additional sound in later. The subtlety of the look. Right now I'm taking a photography class to learn more about how to make film, and I'm discovering how difficult it is to balance light and shadows, Well, on video, you have to have almost perfect conditions. You can't shoot on a bright sunny day because then your shadows are too dark and your highlights are too light. On film, you can. And so you have a lot more options with film than you do with video. If you have a studio, it's much cheaper to shoot with video than it is with film, and so then why not go for video, because you can control the lighting situations then.
Well, what are you saying? You can control the lighting with film through what, exposure?
Yeah, exposure and choice of film.
And you can't, couldn't you with iris?
You can with video, except you're just more limited. Video is limited to the darkest spot can only be, or the lightest spot can only be 30 times brighter than the darkest spot.
The film stock is just more sensitive than video, so it allows you broader range of light and dark.
Which brings up an argument that we should spend a half hour on in terms of digitization of video.
Well, as they move towards that, then video will get stronger, but there's no indication now that it can deal with extremely bright light and extremely dark shadows the way film can.
If you had your fantasy, and not that you had $18 million to spend, but budget weren't a problem, what would you like to make a film about?
Well, I'm really interested in drama. I enjoyed making the documentary, but I prefer comedy. So I have several comedy scripts, full-length, feature-length scripts, so I'd like to star Bill Murray and George Carlin and Ally McGraw.
Yes, of course.
And I have, they're kind of madcap comedies. That's what I'd really enjoy doing.
Well, it seems to be right in the time, because right now comedy is as strong as I've ever seen it. Like where 10 or 15 years ago music was this dominant art that was, everything was tied to music. Now comedy is just clearing everything out of its path. What I think one of the cable networks is going to start an all-comedy network show. I can't but think they're going to be buying anything that's got sprockets, 24 hours a day. After about 2 years, you will have burnt through an awful lot of comedy, you think.
Yeah, but still, you can keep running it over. If you're talking about Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, Car 54,
I think they're talking stand-up comedy. Not just like sitcoms. They're talking a comedy cable network.
I think that to me has already been exploited beyond its abilities.
Well, Michael's movie is a comedy, hilarious, and there was humor in yours, and maybe we'll get some local movie makers to bring in some of their comedy shorts, which brings us to the point that you brought up earlier, Michael. The graphic of the address. It's around here somewhere.
It's right there. I think we put it on Mark's shirt.
Of course.
We printed up.
Yes.
If you are interested in having some of your work shown, please call John at that phone number down there or at the address just above it, because we would like to put your work on the air as well and talk to you about filmmaking.
Well, we've got about 1 minute I'd like to hear your comments about Michael Moore and his fabulous movie Roger and Me that hasn't been seen, but there's certainly been a lot of publicity. You have any impressions?
I haven't seen it, and I actually haven't read a whole lot about it. I'm proud to have known Michael Moore. I went to school with him. In fact, we took a costume making class together at Flint U of M. And it impresses me that he's been able to do this. It's kind of an interesting thing. I'm intrigued by the possibilities, or rather that it has been possible for him to make a 90-minute film on the situation.
That's wonderful. Well, we're out of time. We could spend a whole another show on.
Do you have another film you could bring out? We could have you back again.
Well, yeah, I did just finish a short farm tragedy, which if you want to look at it, you can give a...
We'll do it.
All right.
Well, this is John Kotarski
with Michael Kelly
and Mark Friesen, wishing you good evening and see you at the movie.